relieved to know I'm not going to talk to you for very long, because you've really come to hear my good friend Rick talk to you about some of the amazing work that DHL Express, part of the Deutsche Post group, have done over the last 7 years. And my background, spent 20 years your side of the fence as buying and administering great learning and development for huge organisations, and then decided to set up my own thing. And for the last 7 years, I've had the pleasure, but actually a real privilege, to work with the guys at DHL Express. I thought logistics, sending parcels around the world, not hugely interesting. I come from an airline background, hotels, kind of a bit more sexy. What you're going to hear from Rick is an amazing tale of a really forward-thinking group of individuals at DHL Express who decided to wholeheartedly get behind a learning and development and engagement approach that got results in year one that, as someone with 30 years now in the industry, I was blown away with. But for the last 7 years, those results have done nothing but go up. And they are miracle workers at tracking those results, listening to the feedback that they get and changing their approach. So the great thing was the link between DHL Express and ourselves is that we share one really simple belief, that all human beings are remarkable, and if you give them the right development opportunities and you engage them in the right way, they are more than capable of providing remarkable and ongoing remarkable results for organisations. It's an L&D approach. It's got huge amounts of communications approaches in it. It was interesting to hear Di talking. I started life in marketing, and our view of our employees, I say ours, I'm already working there, of our employees in any organisation is they're just like customers of any other brand. If you want a customer here to buy this product rather than that product, you have to influence them and their way of thinking. So everything that we do through the L&D approach with Rick is about how do we influence people using tried and tested marketing approaches, as well as great behavioural psychology, to shift the way people think, to change their behaviour, and ultimately to transform the performance of organisations. Deutsche Post DHL is the 7th biggest employer on the planet, somewhere over 500,000 employees in over 220 countries. I'm going to introduce you to Rick to say the rest. DHL Express, truly the world's most international company, as you will hear. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Okay, so it falls to me now just to spend the next 20-25 minutes talking to you about our story. And I always consider myself fairly new to the L&D world. I'm not an L&D person. I was so happy to listen to Di when she said that she works for commercial. I work for the CEO. I'm an IT guy. My background is IT, so I'm an IT project manager by trade. And then I fell into the world of L&D, engagement and motivation and culture, because the CEO told me that's what I was going to do next from my IT world. So it's all a bit new. I've been doing it for 6 years, and we've made a million of mistakes, but we've had huge successes. And I think I have to thank NKD for inviting me to this. This isn't generally something that I would normally come to, although I've had lots of nice conversation. I generally wouldn't come to things like this because I wouldn't really know about them and I'm not in the world of it. So it's actually quite nice to speak to people who are in this world, which is great. So is there oh, it's here, okay. So just to put it into context from the story perspective, is this working, or where do I point this to? Oh, there we go. So let me tell you about our story. Okay, there's the story. So DHL Express, not many people, as Sue said, think DHL Express is a sexy company. It's not really the sexiest company in the world, but what we do is great. We are the world's most international company. Now I'm talking about DHL Express, part of the Deutsche Post fold of businesses. We have 100,000 people in DHL Express, and we are in every single country of the world. Actually, there's one country we're not in, and I'll give a big prize to the person who can tell me what that country is at the break. Not you, Sue. So we're not in one country of the world, but in every single country of the world, we have people. And they're our own people. And it's in very, very small markets like North Korea or Cuba, where we have agents who will deliver things for us. So we are generally, and if you can find a company that's bigger than us in the world, I will also give you something very special. So that was our challenge, and in 2008 we lost 2.2 billion euros as a company. This wasn't good for Deutsche Post because it's made up of lots of different brands, and so we had a challenge, and the US market alone was losing 100 million euros a month, and the CEO, who is now the global CEO, was plunged into the US and told to fix it, and he's very quickly realized that the only way he was going to do that was through the people. And so in the US in 2008, he started to look at how do we change the culture of an organization that was primarily focused on, do we have any Americans here today? Okay, so apologies for what I'm about to say. We come from a market where Americans are very much focused on the US. They don't really know much outside of the US, and it caused us a bit of a challenge. We had something like 35,000 people based in the US who understood the US are not an international business. Now we're an international network business. And our primary core product is time definite international. It's the deliver by 9, deliver by 12, close of business the next day. So what we did was closed our domestic business in the US. We couldn't compete with UPS, we couldn't compete with FedEx. It was never going to happen. We spent 10 billion euros, or Deutsche Post spent 10 billion euros trying to make it work, and so we just closed it down. 35,000 people made redundant overnight. We were left with probably around, I think it was 2,000 or 3,000 people who needed an international focus. They needed something to drive an international culture in an organization, and that's what we did. So we started in the US and very quickly realized that if we were going to give somebody an international focus, it would work all over the world. So we started with what we called CIS, which is our Certified International Specialist Program. Really, in essence, it's a cultural change and employee motivation and engagement program, primarily driven through L&D, with lots of frills around the outside with regards to our SUSED, communications, working with HR on lots of different things. But we took it out of L&D, we took L&D out of HR, gave it to me. I worked for the CEO. I still work for the CEO 6 years later. And so we had this challenge of addressing an organization that needed to have this cultural change across the world. So that was the challenge we had. We had all the cultures to deal with. We have all the languages to deal with in the world. We have a mix of age range of people from the 21, 22, 23-year-olds all the way through to people who've worked in the business for 42 years. So we had a huge range of people with different backgrounds, different cultures, different experience that we had to deal with to engage and change a culture so they were all the same, all saying the same thing. And that was the challenge. So myself and a team of about 4 people decided to go and do an RFP, and hence we found NKD. That was the challenge we gave them. We weren't L&D people. We didn't know what we wanted to do. We just knew that we had to capture the hearts and minds of an organization. So we went to NKD and said, okay, in your small company, you're going to change the biggest, most international company in the world. And that's what we've done. So we went to them and said, okay, this is what we want to do. How are we going to do it? And that was the gauntlet laid. This is it. This is what we've got to do. What do you want us to do? We need to get the hearts and minds of the people. So what did we do? And there's a million things I could talk about for the next 4 hours. But the first thing we did, and what was very, very important, was we understood that, and this may go against some other things I may say later in this 20 minutes, but we understood initially that the first thing we needed to do, no matter who you were, whether you were a courier in Ghana, you were a key account manager in Canada, or you were the CEO of China, we knew we had to get you into a room at some point, and we had to give you an experience that you could live and breathe the excitement and the history and the rich sexiness of what DHL Express was really all about. And so that's what we did. And we did it in a very experiential, blended learning kind of way. So we had everybody in the room. We had to get to all these 100,000 people. We gave them an opportunity to come together for a day and a half with a dinner, with a networking, with activities, with film, with animation, everything that you heard Di say with regards to what goes into the app. We brought all of that into the classroom. So we have rolling animation, we have so much film of all of our leaders across the business, and use this activity base for us to really, really engage with the people. Now, one of the biggest things that we had to do, and this is something that's been touched on a couple of times this morning, is with regards to reaching out to the people with language. And this is a huge deal for us in DHL Express. I know there was a talk this morning on the very first opening piece around the guys in France. I think it was what you were saying was that it's difficult to get them to speak English. We have that problem with our senior management teams in many markets, not just in France. So we had to understand that if we were going to really engage these people, and once we talked to them, we had to do it in their own language. So we made a decision there and then that everything we do, moving forward from 2010 onwards, was going to be translated into our 95% of our target market's language. So whatever we did, whatever intervention we did, we would always go to 95% of that market, which means when we go out to the 100,000 people, we translate everything into about 42 languages across the world. Now, it does help that Deutsche Post owns a translation company. So we made use of that, and so we now have a huge organisation that we've built and rebuilt within our Deutsche Post arena that deals with all our translation. We have a translation dictionary now of about 29 million words across the last 6 years that we use across our whole business. So the scale of everything that we do is always huge. I mean, I take it for granted, but the scale of everything we have is so big that we have its own challenges with scale. So we use that now, and everything we do is in the language base. So we have everything in 42 languages. It was a huge deal. Then there was two big things that also drove what we believed was the engagement in there. Now, the first was we employed the concept of gamification. So all of the gaming techniques that are used in apps and the gaming techniques that are used in all of these computer-based the games that people have, we decided that this collecting, as Di was mentioning at the end there, the collecting of tokens or the collecting of things, putting people in competition with league tables and everything else was always going to work for us. So what we did was introduce a passport. Now, I have my passport here. This is my passport. Proper passport paper, proper passport covers. In fact, when we printed these, the UK government ran out of passport paper for 2 weeks because we placed an order for 120,000. So this is the passport that we have. You collect tokens, you collect visas. So I've got all of mine here. So everything you do with us, we've got visas, we have fancy stickers, we have stamps, we have comments made by the CEO if he's there. So you get to collect things and you can compare them to everybody in the world. We didn't realize at first how impactful this was going to be. We knew we would give it out. In fact, the first ones are actually made of paper. I think the first 1,000 are made with paper. When we realized the impact of this, we realized we were onto something really huge. So you can go anywhere in the world and speak to anybody in DHL Express, and they will show you their passport. So next time you see a courier, or somebody delivers a parcel to your company, or you speak to them, they'll have the logo on their courier shirt now, because all the uniform globally has the logo, talking about the brand. We had our own brand. I don't know if you can see the brand on here. I'll just forward the... No, can't see that. Get back. Okay. Here's the logo, the CIS logo you can see on the corner there, part of the animation. That's now on all of our uniforms all over the world. So the corporate brand people of Deutsche Post gave in to our request to say, look, we need this on our logo externally for customers. So if you see the logo, ask them about the logo, ask them about the passport, and they should, with pride, talk to you about what the company does for its people, what the strategy of the company is. You could go anywhere in the world and they'll tell you that. They'll tell you all about what they've done in their own personal development journey. And I've got actually a couple of really interesting stories about this. I was on holiday in Bali at the beginning of the month, in January, and I went into the DHL office, a tiny, tiny office, not much bigger than this stage. No DHL on me, but talked to the lady who was running the office in Bali, and didn't tell her I worked for DHL. And talked to her about the company, and she waxed lyrical about the strategy, what she's done. She showed me a passport and everything to do with the people. And then I told her, oh, I work for DHL and I do this, and she was shocked. But I could show her my passport, and we had something in common. And this is someone who you never really meet around the world. I'd never probably see her again. but it's something that connects us all and really drives what we needed to do in an organisation. So that's a really, really good, something to introduce. Is a really good tangible, something they can hold, something they can touch, and everything else that went with it. And one other story about this, because this is a really emotional story that is very new to us in DHL. I don't even think I've told many people in NKD about this yet. But very recently, a refugee from Syria was in Germany and come across from Syria to Germany with all of the hordes of refugees that went into Germany and lost everything on the way. And this poor guy had nothing except his CIS passport. And it was the only thing that was saved in all of his belongings. And he walked into a DHL Express, it wasn't a DHL Express, he walked into a DHL Post, which is the German post office, business, and went to talk to them at the reception, showed them that he was a refugee, needed help, and he showed them his DHL CIS passport. And they've employed him. And he worked for DHL Express in Syria, disappeared overnight, had to get out with all his family. And they've employed him, and he's now learning German, and he's the service centre manager of that particular service centre. So these are the things that we use, and we're proud of what we do with this, and it's a real sort of selling point for us of what we do. So that was the second biggest thing. The third thing is, who does this? So we, as an organisation, knew that we had to get to all of these people, and we were bringing people together all over the world in groups of 20, and we had to get through 100,000 people in a year. And that's a huge, huge thing for us. And we'd done everything we could centrally. We'd provided all the materials, and we'd spent probably close to 50 million euros at a time when the business was spending nothing, and we were losing 2 billion a year. The CEO decided he'd take the risk, and we spent 50 million euros in a year doing this. And one of the things that we decided by doing that was that we wouldn't use NKD in this instance, or any external provider, to deliver anything that we had. If we were going to do anything with intervention with any people and capture their hearts and minds and talk to them about the company and give them the passion of what DHL was all about, we had to do it, and including the CEO. So what we did was we took about 1,200 people through a train the facilitator type program for 2 weeks, including the CEO and the global management board. Came away with me for 2 weeks, and we sat away in a hotel, away from the business, and we taught them how to facilitate. Broke them down, made them cry, do all that type of stuff, but we built them back up again. It's probably why I've got such a close relationship with the CEO. But we build them back up again, and then they can facilitate, and it's not just in their CIS life, it's in their personal life, it impacts as well. So we took them all away, and so we deliver everything. You won't go to anything in DHL Express that is not delivered by one of the senior management team within the company. And that could be anybody from a supervisor all the way up to the CEO. So we passed all responsibility onto the management teams to drive what we wanted to do within the business. And that was the 3 big things that really worked for us. And the challenge was that was what we did in a year. This was 2010 to end of 2011. The challenge then was what we're going to do to move on. Because we'd done one thing, we'd set an expectation, and where do we go from there? Where do we go? And I'm going to show you some of our EOS results now, before I talk about where we went after that and where we're heading to in the next 5 years. Because we were in a position when the US was losing all that money, where our employee opinion survey that we do every year was really low. We measure 4 things from my behalf, from the employee opinion survey. We measure engagement, active leadership, strategy, and learning and development. We measure the 4 things out of the whole survey, the 4 things that I know I can directly impact to those 4 categories. And we were in the position of around 68% globally. And this is what we've managed to do by just doing this over the last 5 years. So what you can see now, this is the global figures, and it varies by country. So if you look at, and the reason that we don't have any figures between 2010 and 2014 in the top 4 is because Deutsche Post in its wisdom changed the employee opinion survey in 2015. So we can't compare year on year. But what we have got is the old engagement and active leadership scores along the bottom, and we went from there 68 and 69 right through to last year of 86 and 85. So we've made globally around an 18% engagement increase and 16% active leadership increase in the business. So all employees now are really feeling what we're trying to do with them. And this isn't just what we did in the first year, it's everything else that surrounds it. But this is what we tried to do. Now, I have a target, which I didn't write on there because I don't write it down, but I have a target of 90% by 2020, which means I need to do 1% every year. The challenge is now, as Di said about keeping the 91, how do I increase it by 1 every single year when you have 100,000 people to think about? I don't know if the answer to that question. I have no idea, so we'll skip that. But what we will do is keep monitoring this as much as we possibly can, because I do have to get to 2020 with 90% in engagement and 90% in active leadership. So we'll work out how best to do it. So that was the starting point. I don't know how much minutes I've got left. So what I'm going to do is talk you through what else we've done since we did this initial interaction of this day and a half. Because what we have in the business now is around, should have got the proper figures for this, but I think we've got around 120 different modules or training interventions or learning and development interventions with everybody in the world for different reasons. Now, this stretches from induction program when you're a new starter, leadership skills for our senior management team, management skills really, as well as leadership skills, and all of the skills and knowledge that you need to do whatever role you have in the organization, whether you are this salesperson with a huge curriculum, or your customer services with your own curriculum, or network operations courier with your own curriculum. The skills and knowledge you need to do your role are all now in place, and we've got another 5 years of development to make that happen. So if we've got to the position, and I always say that when people ask me what do you do for your job, it's very difficult to explain, but what I say to people is if I can make 100,000 people happy, then I know I've done my job, because that means they're happy to be in the job. They're going into the office on a Monday morning saying, yeah, I'm working for DHL Express. I'm going into the office on a Monday, but equally, on a Friday night, they're going home and saying, I've got the weekend, it's great, I'm sick of work. But as long as they're happy to come back on Monday morning, it's perfect. And that's where we've got to get to. So we've got these modules in place, lots and lots of different interventions, skills and knowledge, leadership, and induction. Every new person that comes into DHL now gets a huge global 5-day, sit in a room, induction, no matter who you are, in your own language, with all the bells and whistles that goes with it. And in fact, what we've just done, and this is what we're now doing moving forward, which is where I'll come to the future piece, is we're talking a lot around what we're doing with digital, big thing, big deal for us now, but also how am I integrating with the HR organisation? So how am I working with them on all of their core HR business process that you're all very aware of? I don't need to go into all of that, but what am I doing that can help the HR organisation with all of their processes, whether that's talent management, whether it's acquisition, pipeline, succession planning? How do we integrate everything into what they can use to effectively drive the business? And the first thing we've started is really around onboarding. And what is it that we can do when we onboard people into DHL Express? So we have a turnover around about 10% now. It's actually gone down over the last 4 years. So we are recruiting into the organisation between 10 and 15,000 people a year, due to expansion, but also due to natural attrition. And what we now do with people, if you want to come work for DHL, please feel free. But what we do is we bring, or we get a courier to come to your house 2 weeks before you start your job, once you've signed your contract. And the courier will come to your premises, whether it's your old job, probably not the wisest thing to do, but your old job or your house, and they'll come with a box, and they will know that you're a new employee because there'll be a great big CIS sticker on the DHL box, and they will shake your hand and they'll say, welcome to DHL Express, I'm your, I work in this area, and they'll talk to you a little bit about the company. You'll open the box, and in the box is a video book, so you get these little screens in books. So we give everybody a video playbook with the CEO saying, welcome, you're working for the world's most international company. We have the characters, our animated characters that were on the old slide, talking to them about how great the company is. The HR director says a little bit about what they're going to experience when they arrive. And this is all for them and their family to get them into the culture and to get them engaged before they come into the business. It's just one small thing that we've done. But this is how we're now starting to integrate. So we're working with HR. They have a full new onboarding process on the back of all of this. So all these key processes with regards to management of talent, acquisition, everything, recruitment, the lot, we're starting to integrate with all of that to see what they can actually do. So that's one big thing, is where we're now focusing. The next big thing is digital, as I said. And one of the things that we realized is, as was said this morning twice, is listening to the people and what they want. We didn't go out and do anything because I was so paranoid about getting it wrong that we went out and spoke to all of the different types of people we have in our organisation, whether they are the immediately out of university types or whether they've been in the business 40 years. What is it that we can do for them? And we realised that our biggest population in the business is supervisors, and these are the future of our business. I can't talk for yours, but in our business, the future is supervisory. So anyone in a supervisory role who manages couriers or manages warehouse workers or manages a customer service team or manages a group of field sales people, they're the important people in our business, and they've been the ones that have been starved of most things. So we went into this organisation, we interviewed about 5,000 of them and said, what is it that you really want? What is it that we can give you that can help you with your role? And they came back with all these wild and crazy things, as they do, and we went with most of them and said, let's just do it, let's try it and see. Luckily, the CEO was on a good day and signed off for me to partnership with Samsung. So we now have purchased probably about 13,000 tablets that we give out to every single supervisor in any country of the world, no matter where they are. So the supervisor, as they start their new sort of supervisory journey in our organisation, now receives a brand new Samsung tablet, and everything we do and design is driven off the tablet. Now we're doing this, it's a 2-year academy, so we've built a business school for managers, for first-line managers that we don't really find anywhere else external. We couldn't find one that was suitable enough. So we give them the humanity piece that you were talking about this morning, of the communications, and the fact the first thing we give them is how to communicate, how to talk, how to deal with your team, how to deal with diversity, how to deal with, courier not wanting to come in when someone else is on holiday. So we work with them, and we built a 2-year academy, and we drive everything through the tablets. So they come in the classroom as an initial stage, we give them what they need, and all of the old style paperwork that you would get within a classroom with books and journals and note writing, everything else is now all gone. We don't have any of that. It's all on the tablet. So they can write and tap. It's a very different feeling. I don't know whether you've been in a room where normally if you're in you've all been in a training room clearly, but when you're in the room and people are writing and they may write a few lines and they'll look up and they'll talk and they'll write a few lines and everyone's chatting. Now, all you hear is that's it. So when we're starting to say to people, just reflect on, what you've just learned and what did you take from that? And we've realised inadvertently that they write probably around 200% more on the tablet than they would ever have written when they had the books. So they're taking a lot more away with them when they're on these programs because they're writing so much down because they're so used to using the tablets. So we realised then, right, if that's the way we're going to go, that's it. So Samsung now give us 13,000 tablets. We control them through our facility in Brussels. We now have a warehouse specifically for this because there's so much collateral. We have something like 5,000 lines of product that we ship out all over the world. And we use now a very blended learning of our supervisors of how do we take the tablet on the job, and the manager of the supervisor has to deal with everything to do with their learning for the next 3 to 6 months. Then they'll come back to us, then they'll go away for 3 to 6 months, then they'll come back to us, then they'll go away for 3 to 6 months, and then they have a nice cap and gown ceremony where they can bring their families, and these people generally haven't been to university, a lot of them, so they don't get that experience. So we're giving them the cap and gown and they're throwing the things, and it's a great experience for everybody involved. And so this is our huge start of our digital journey. Now, what we're also doing in the background is, this is my challenge for 2020. So I've just had to present to our global conference in January. What's my strategy every year between now and 2020? This is where the 90% came from, which was dictated down. So I had to present how we're going to get there. And the big driver for us is digital. And one of the things that we're looking into is usage of 2D augmented reality. I don't know whether you know much about all of these types of things, but it's not that expensive, actually, to be perfectly honest. But we're using 2D augmented reality, 3D augmented reality. We've now got the goggles with 360 filming. So if you want to go around one of our global hubs, you can now go around and visit and do what you want. So we've got 360 goggles, 360 film, sorry, in the goggles. We're playing a lot with VR, and this is what NKD, you can actually see this, I think NKD did something with Tesco, was it? Okay. So you can see this at the NKD stand. I think you've got the goggles there, I saw them. So we're playing a lot around with VR, and what do we do with VR for the learning now? And also 3D VR. I went to see a company this week, which was so cool, where you have the goggles and you've got the sticks and you can lift things up and you're in a world and someone's in with you, and it's just nuts, it's crazy. But we're looking at all these different types of technologies to say, what can we do? How do we make this applicable and practical to us on a per person basis, on a cost per person basis? So we don't have, I know I said the 50 million, we don't have masses and masses of money. When you look at it on a per person basis, when you look at us versus competitors, we spend around 300 to 500 euros per person per year. Our competitors, like UPS and FedEx, spend around $1,500 per year per person. So what we get from what we invest, and we have a fully loaded translation effort, which they don't have, what we get for what we invest versus what they get, that we know about, is value for money, huge value for money. So whilst we are continuing to invest, this year's going to be a bit tight, but whilst we're continuing to invest, we get to try all these funky style, different types of technologies. We're doing a lot with podcasts and all sorts of things that go with it, and apps. We've got I think we have about 25 apps now, for different reasons, for different parts of the business, all driven through the L&D and what we're doing with that. So that's what we've done. That's the story in a nutshell. I wasn't sure how long, I could talk about this for hours, but I wasn't sure how much I'd be able to fit in that time. But the one last thing I'll say is, we are in a very unique position because we have a CEO who absolutely 100% believes in everything that starts with the people. Everything starts with engagement of the people. And I know that that's very unique. I'm aware of the luxury I have with that. And so it's easy for me to stand here and say, whoa, this is what we do. But we do have that in place, and that's what drives what we do. So much so that and this is now to my second job. So my first job is DHL Express. My second job now, for the last year, or well, I suppose 18 months, is now we're doing this for the whole group. So the group CEO, who is my boss's boss, Mr. Frank Apple, decided that he would like to make certified, so to speak, as part of his cornerstone pillar of one of his strategies for 2020. So if you look up Deutsche Post in the internet and you look at the strategy of what we're going to do for the next 5 years, you will see one of the key pillars is around connecting people. And one of the lines within that is everybody will be certified specialists in everything that they do. And so what we've done is we've expanded this now. So my remit isn't to make 100,000 people happy, it's to make 500,000 people happy. Okay, that's not the easiest thing in the world, and especially when 200,000 of them are German. Apologies for the German people. I'm not supposed to say that either. But what we have now is our families of divisions who all absolutely 100% are starting to buy into this. So please, take what you can from this. I'm aware that your company may not be as big. You may not have the same scale and challenge we have. But the nuggets, and I've taken so much away from the first two presentations this morning to take away. I'm thinking, I'll take that, I'll steal that one. Use it, use what you can, and ask around as well. And Nicola's here. Nicola works for our supply chain. who has 150,000 people in the world. Nicola works in the UK. And Monique's here, who actually works for our translation company, which is great, as a L&D for the translation company. So we've now expanded, what I'm saying, we're expanding all of this out to the whole group. So I now have two bosses, the CEO of Deutsche Post and the CEO of DHL, who have a vested interest in exactly what we do as an organisation. So that's it. I will be around now. Or if there's any questions, actually, I think there's
time for one
opportunity
quick
questions.
question.
Okay. I've done that. Oh, okay.
What happens if you lose your passport?
That's a very good question. One, you get really upset and pissed with yourself. We just give you a new one. We obviously have all of the technology behind the scenes with the LMS that knows what you've done, so we can replace all the stickers. But one thing that really upsets everybody is when you do go on these courses, one thing that we make sure of is that a member of the SMT of the country that you're in, irrespective of whether it's just that country on that course, turns up at the programme and gives a speech and gives out the passports and shakes the hand. And as part of all of that, they actually sign it and put some messages in. So I've got, for example, well, I'll say that. I generally don't get comments, which is a bit weird. So you get comments against some of your stickers. So if the CEO's there, you get all of that. Now, if you lose your passport, they're not going to come back and re-sign it. And that's where people become so disappointed. You know, we don't get many lost, to be honest. It's probably about 5-10% max. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, I did use my passport to get through Johannesburg airport on the cargo side. Not very secure. But I thought I'd test it out, and they let me in. Someone got into Germany with one of these, actually, as well, believe it or not. Yeah. It's a cologne. Anyone?
Okay. Oh.
No? Well, I'll be around anyway, so if people want to ask a question, I know, and the guys are all at NKD stand anyway, and they know everything about what we're doing, so... Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rick Jackson. Thank you.